Welcome back to American Arms Channel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Drake, and today we're taking a look at the Benelli Vinci, specifically how to disassemble the bolt module. Now, Benelli calls all of these different sub-assemblies modules, and that's really not that wrong to call them that. The Vinci is a very interesting shotgun, to say the least, and it's an excellent one at the very least. So, a lot of guys wonder, how do I completely get my trigger group apart, or how do I completely get my bolt assembly apart for either detailed cleaning or parts replacement or maintenance? And these videos will show you how to do that. Please check out the Duck Gun playlist, the Super Black Eagle 3 playlist, the SX4 playlist, and now the Benelli Vinci playlist for all things revolving around these firearms, whether it's shooting videos, disassembly videos, reviews, etc. All the information you need from American Arms Channel can be found on those playlists. Now, let's get right into it. I'm starting here with the barreled receiver with the action assembled inside of it, just in case you're struggling with it. Now, here on the inside, there is a little tab with a circle, and you'll just want to stick your finger in there, push down and pull back, and it will come right out. And you can see a well-worn Vinci will have this kind of bent, and this may very well be something that you need to replace. This is kind of a rubber buffer. It can get chewed up, and it also can require maintenance and replacement. So this is one of the major reasons you might need to disassemble this bolt assembly. We're going to pull it out, and to the takedown notch, the circle right here, and your charging handle will come right out. Go ahead and set that to the side. Now you can remove your carrier group or your bolt module, and you can take your barreled receiver module and set it aside. So this looks like it might be some sort of complicated space magic, but really it's not. And it doesn't quite require 3 hands. So what I'm going to recommend you do is start with disassembly of the bolt in your standard fashion from the carrier. Pull out your retention pin. If you need to, use something like a punch, a spoon, a knife blade, anything at all to pop that right out. Careful, because your firing pin is spring loaded. You will have a spring in there that you need to remove. Now we can take our cam pin, pull it right out, and now our bolt can come out. And our inertia spring. So that's about as far down as Benelli recommends you get it. So now you've got this spring-loaded giant hunk of steel and a floating ejector over here. So if you need to maintain any of these parts, well, how do you do that? Well, let's take a look at how we do that. So the best thing to do is to grasp the guide rod and pull down your spring and try and keep this pulled back. So let's watch that again. I'm going to pull the spring back, hold it, and I'm going to kind of pull the rods out. Now you can see that all of these plates and this buffer is kind of easing itself back, and that's exactly what you want. This buffer is just a loose fit. It has open top. Now what we're going to do is, by releasing tension on the secondary, the lower rod, I can move this into the takedown position, and I'm going to just pop this out. Now you may need to pull this farther back past the point here, and you'll have this completely compressed. And now this will actually release. You may not have to come back this far, but sometimes, like with mine, it takes a little bit more finagling. Now, this is all under spring tension, of course, so be very mindful and slowly ease it out. I recommend grasping the spring and not letting it shoot across the room. Remove your action spring, and then your primary guide rod will come right out the front, and you can see it does collect a little bit of gunk. And now you've got your bolt assembly. The only thing left to do is to remove your ejector. Simply push it all the way back and tilt it out. We'll look at that again. One more time now. I have it backwards. But it's going to be floating in here. Push all the way back. Here's your takedown notches, and it's just going to fall right out. And now you've got a big chunk of metal. Remove our strike plate and our buffer. And this is all one piece. Don't worry about taking this apart. There's no need to do so. So there we are. A completely disassembled Benelli Vinci, Benelli Super Vinci bolt module. Now the Super Vinci is going to vary a little bit from this in that it's going to have a little bit extra length and a little bit extra material here and there because you're dealing with a 3.5-inch Magnum chambered shotgun instead of a 3-inch Magnum chambered shotgun. So now you can clean, maintain, replace components. Like I said, your most often component to probably replace is going to be this buffer. This one's getting a little worn, but it will probably not require replacement for several thousand more rounds. But I would recommend, and I'm going to do this myself, especially if you use your Vinci a lot, you'll want to have an extra one of these or two on hand, just in case. Springs as well. Springs will need to be replaced every so often, but this Benelli Vinci has had several thousand rounds through it, and this spring is just as fresh as when it came out of the box. All right, so now let's reassemble the bolt module. You'll want to start by taking your ejector and inserting it into your bolt. This is the front end of the bolt, so we'll turn it right around, and this funky looking cut on the bottom left hand side is what you want. Now the scoop and the actual ejecting face of the ejector, you're going to want to face directly into the body of the bolt. You're going to push it forward and you're going to wiggle it down because you want, and let's see if I can show this to you here, you want this profile going into the bolt. So you want this small tab right here going into the face of this channel right here. So we're going to drop that in, and you can see it's real easy fit. Let's set that down for just a second. Now we're going to take our primary guide rod and we're going to insert it through the front of the bolt on the top. And please remember that your locking tab here, the one that keeps it indexed in the bolt properly, is going to be on the left-hand side when you're looking down at it. If you're in this orientation, it's the left-hand side. You'll push it back. You'll also want to make sure that this scalloping, this concave nature of this rod, is facing downwards. Once you get that locked in, you're all good to go. I find it easiest at this point to take your recoil spring, your action spring, and run it over the top of your guide rod. This is a bidirectional spring. You do not have to worry about which end is going towards what. Next, I like to take and get this ejector retained by inserting it. But first, before you forget, note to myself here, you want to insert your buffer. Use this small hole here. The notch up top should line up with the notch here in the rear plate. You'll then want to do the same here. It has a hole right here. a larger one here, and a similar sized hole at the bottom. And then of course you have a center access hole. You'll want to run this guide rod through the lower, if you're in this orientation, the lower right. If you're looking at it from the rear, the lower left. Now that we have that together, we can insert it into the channel with the ejector. So here's where kind of the three-handed operation comes in. These two rear components, the buffer and the end plate, don't have to be inserted over the main guide rod here, but the strike plate does. So what I'm going to do, and this is where it's hard to demonstrate again these kinds of things on camera, but I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to put it over the end of the primary guide rod and the hole for the ejector and secondary guide rod. And I am going to simply run this spring back, and I'm going to pinch it with my hand just like this. So again, I'm going to use my other hand to push the spring back, and I'm going to pinch it against myself by putting my middle finger of my right hand here on the bolt and my index finger here, and I'm going to pinch it. I'm going to turn this strike plate right here to run over the top, and now I can retain it by simply holding it and pushing it down into the table. Just like that. But because we're doing this on video, I'm going to retain it with my thumb and compress it like this. Now I can take my buffer and just slip it over. Again, take the buffer and just slip it over the main guide rod. It's a big flexy piece of rubber, so don't worry about it. I'm going to push down my secondary guide rod and end plate here. And now here's the tricky part. I'm going to get this lined up with this notch, and that's where some of the indexing comes very important. I'll show that to you again here. I've come up and in, and now it's retained. And now I can simply get the rubber piece and the strike plate all aligned here. And if I give it a good pop against the main body of the bolt, it's not going to bend anything, it's not going to hurt anything, and it's going to go right into place. And now if I compress it, I should get a nice smooth travel. It will catch on this little lip here, but once it's in the shotgun, everything's guided well enough that that is not a problem. So there is your main bolt body reassembly. Now the rest of it is all pretty standard Benelli. Put your inertial spring in the center axis of the bolt. Make sure your extractor is on the right hand side. Insert the bolt. It will stop and it won't really turn either way. Take your indexing pin, your cam pin, this this large tab at the top you'll want to travel with perpendicular to the travel of the bolt. That will allow the firing pin to travel through it. Drop your firing pin spring in the channel slightly. Run your firing pin down in. Compress with your finger. Take your firing pin retention pin, insert it into its marker, and there we go. We are back together and assembled, and reassembly into the receiver is as simple as pushing the entire assembly back in. Of course, once you seat your charging handle and pushing this all the way in. Of course, if you know how to field strip your Benelli Vinci, you will know how to get that bolt carrier group in and out. I hope this video was helpful for you guys. I hope it was insightful if you're struggling with this yourself, whether you need to maintain or replace parts. As always, guys, God bless. Keep your powder dry. I'll see you in the next video.